All right. Good morning, Doug. We are back with questions from members of the file. One announcement I should make before we get started is that we have this Plan B workshop coming up in October of this year. It's the second one we've done. We only have 10 more spots at the current price. The idea is that we raise the price as we get more and more participants. So we have 10 more spots left at the current pricing. So if you're interested in checking it out, it happens in October. You can go to crisisinvesting.com, and at the top of the page, you'll see Plan B Conference. So that has all the details. So let's talk about some news items, Doug, before we get to questions. First thing is the presumed incoming mayor of New York. Now, he hasn't won the final election yet, but he won the Democratic primary, which he's kind of the presumed victor at this point. And he's definitely an outsider with some very socialist, if not kind of communist-like views, but is a kind of a charismatic guy too. So what
Oh
are your
yeah, he's
thoughts?
got a great looking smile. What I've seen, he's quite affable. He's a likable kind of guy.
Yeah, and he
Yeah,
does good with and he's 33 years old, and he does, he does a lot of like video takes from the street talking about what he's going to do, including things like that they're going to open city-owned grocery stores, for instance.
that's a great idea. I'm sure they'll. Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. And public transportation will be free. There'll be strict rent control. Taxes on rich people will go up, 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 up. Uh, I mean, every idea he has is really stupid and evil and destructive, but he seems like just the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah, he does. And but I have to say, and I think, he's winning. He won. It seems like because he's got this charisma and he's likable. That's one part that really helps him. Plus the fact that he's promising freebies to everybody.
Yes, of course. How
A-
can you?
And I think, in many ways, it's not that much different than Trump in this way. Trump offered lots of freebies. He talked about getting rid of the IRS. He talked about the fact that we were going to make foreigners pay our taxes. He's
Hmm.
definitely not going to cut Medicare or Medicaid.
Oh, no.
He's no tax on tips. I mean, it was like there were lots of gimmies there that were on offer with Trump too, and it seems like that's the way to win with the American public today.
Yeah, the American public has absolutely zero understanding of economics. And uh, since it's said half of the country that's working, forget about the people that aren't working, are living paycheck to paycheck, it's got a lot of appeal. Plus, there's a lot of envy towards rich people because the rich people are really, really rich, like
Right.
really, really
Yeah.
rich.
Yeah. Being a
It's
millionaire is a joke now.
a joke. That's right. You can't even buy a house, a decent house, in many places for $1 million. So
Yeah.
forget about it. And of
Yeah.
course,
But,
if
but
you
it,
buy, if you buy $1 million house, then depending on where you are, the annual rent to the government could range up to $20,000 per year, like in
or
Illinois,
more,
yeah,
or
or
more.
more. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely true. But I think this goes back to that Michael Moore commentary that we read, about a year ago now that a lot of people hated us discussing, saying that the American public was basically leaned left these
Yeah,
days. And
because
this is
Michael
it.
Michael Michael Moore came up with 20 factors. We checked him out, and he was accurate. He wasn't making stuff up. And all of these things were just horrible, socialistic. Yeah, so of course, no, America's it's on the slippery slope, and the slide downhill is accelerating. And I can't wait to see what happens when Zoran is elected in New York. It'll really be an instructional example because he's, you know, like that mayor in Chicago is he's not ideological. He's just kind of a stupid criminal, like that woman that was the previous mayor of Chicago, and like Karen Bass, who's the mayor of Los Angeles, doesn't have any particular ideology, but uh, but Zoran is a is an ideological communist with two professors as his parents, and he really believes this shit. So
Yeah, he really believes it. And apparently he's able to convince the New Yorkers that he's what they need. And, I guess maybe it's good. Maybe it's a good thing that he's elected in that, in an American city, we can see what communism looks like up
yeah,
close.
well, it's like Lenin said, the worse it gets, the better it gets. So maybe it'll get bad enough that it'll act as shock therapy. And the other thing I'd point out is what Nietzsche said: that which is about to fall deserves to be pushed.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I heard people online actually in Porter was tweeted about somebody who was some billionaire who was approached about are they going to fund the candidate who's against him, and he's like, I don't even know if it's worth it. And Porter was like made a statement that when the elites won't even fight, then it tells you America's finished, and this billionaire guy won't even fight. And I can understand that sentiment, but at the same time, it's like it's like what Nietzsche said, you know,
Yeah,
and it's just better let people get what they deserve.
yeah, yeah. I'm a great believer in justice, and justice is people getting what they deserve. So you vote for a communist, you deserve what you're going to get. And anyway, uh, you can bail and leave New York, which is turning into a shithole. And it's come to my attention. I hadn't thought of this before, but I was talking to a friend the other day, and it's completely obvious. So, renouncing U.S. citizenship, very expensive if you have any money, because you have to pay accumulated capital gains taxes on everything before you leave. But somebody pointed out that, well, the way to do it is to move to Puerto Rico, and after it'll help. It won't obviate the problem, but you sell everything as a Puerto Rican resident, that'll save you a lot of money, and then you bail. Uh, I
Yeah.
should have done this. I should have done this years ago when there was no penalty to it, and could have become a New Zealand citizen, which is a great passport, which gives you automatic visa-free entrance to the U.S. And oh well, that boat has sailed.
Yeah, it has, unfortunately. And also, in the current era, I wonder about giving up your US passport because obviously the tax obligations suck, and especially when you don't live in the United States or benefit from whatever alleged services you might receive there. Um, the case of Roger Ver, where he renounced citizenship 7 or 8 years ago, and they went back at him pretty hard for saying income tax fraud because at the time when you do this calculation, the complicated paperwork you have to do to value your private companies, which is a very subjective thing because there isn't an active market for private companies, right? So that when you do that value, if later apparently the IRS disagrees with it, they can charge you with tax fraud. And that's what they've done to him. And I remember that this all came up in the right as Trump became president, and when there were calls for pardoning certain people, and that's where Ross was pardoned. And then someone floated the idea that maybe Roger Ver should be pardoned. And Elon said there are benefits to being a citizen.
Hmm.
So it's because he wasn't a citizen anymore, he shouldn't even be considered.
Huh. Well, isn't that something? Well, all I can add to this is that you should never forget that the state is not your friend. The state is your enemy, and you're just like a zebra out on the veldt, and the state are predators looking to take you or anybody else down to survive. And that's
Right.
the way it should be viewed.
Yeah. The other thing that was kind of interesting in the news, there was this Newsweek article that was basically looking at the last census, which was from July of 23 to July of 24. So it's it's a year outdated now, but it showed that there were pretty big population changes, and in particular, almost a quarter of a million white Americans fell out of the census, so or died or whatever. And that's it seems like it's only 0.1% of the total U.S. population, but it is, I think, a little interesting, don't you?
Yeah, the chart that came with that in the article, or the version of the article that I read, showed that all the people of color, uh, their populations had been growing apace, actually, but it's only white people that their numbers in absolute numbers, not just the 0.1%, but absolute numbers are falling. So, the makeup and the character of the United States is changing right before our very eyes. And we got to ask, well, wait a minute, why is the white population dropping when the people of color, as they like to say, are growing? And it occurred to me that certainly among young white men, there's this movement called incels, where they don't want to have anything to do with women. And then feminism has become cancerous, where the majority of professionals now graduating from college, as well as college students, are a majority females, and they don't like men. They feel the patriarchy has been brutalizing them and holding them down and so forth. So it's like a war of men against women, quite frankly.
Yeah, and at least these professional women who come out of college want a professional career, and so at least they delay pregnancy, until around in their early 30s they become interested. And I've seen this happen a number of times.
Yes. Yep.
And then of course conception is much more difficult, and they have a lot of them are using various techniques, IVF, for instance. I mean, that's become very popular in order to get pregnant. So I just think that kind of professional route of women where it's delayed substantially, I think is a big factor too. Not just the incels and the feminists who hate men. It's this desire for a professional career, almost this expectation on smart young women that they ought to have one, that delays it and then kind of leaves people in a position where they find it difficult to reproduce.
Yeah. And if they have a kid, they don't have what used to be considered a normal sized family. They have maybe one, um,
Yep.
unlikely two even. So, yeah, this is what's happening to the population. And well, listen, uh, people of European extraction had a good long party. I mean, but no party lasts forever.
Well, I have to say, I've tried to do my part wherever I could, and I only have two kids, but I have confirmed, convinced seven young men to have kids
Hmm.
who were on the who were like, yeah, I don't know, and I'm like, no, no, you you want them. They're good for you. They will make you a better man. Have kids. So I have seven that have confirmed to me that I helped sway them, and they have kids.
Well, I don't have any kids to my knowledge, but you know, I'm a child of the 60s when, uh, especially running around the third world, I mean, you just don't know. But but frankly, I've always said that it's a lottery with kids. Uh, and if I wanted kids, I would adopt, uh, which is, a long-standing Roman tradition.
Yeah, but they didn't
Well,
adopt babies. They didn't adopt babies.
no, that's the whole point. They wouldn't adopt babies. They would adopt kids that were already at least teenagers, so you saw what you were getting.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you don't want to, frankly, it sounds cruel, but you don't want to adopt the lame, the halt, and the blind, or the morally depraved, quite frankly.
Well, and honestly, like the adoption in the traditional method, well, it's very difficult to do legally anymore. It's, very, very difficult to do. And my older brother is adopted. And I have to tell you, like, it causes them a lot of grief. Like, as they were like, they have a sense of rejection by their birth parents, and then always feel like they don't belong. And my older brother suffers from this. It's weird because I like my, you're my brother. Like, you were here the day I showed up. I don't see you any different than my other siblings. But it is in his head. And yeah, I mean, if you're a teenager, it's different. But I think if you're adopted as a young child, I think that does affect you.
Yeah. I don't know how we solve these problems, quite frankly.
We encourage people to have babies. The babies are good. They definitely are good. Good. It is. I wished you had children. I think that it's healthy for a man to have children. I think it changes their perspective. So
Well, I think you're right. It does, it makes you more future oriented because you have, the things that you accumulate. If you don't give them to your kids, what are you going to do? You give them to some crazy left-wing foundation, because all foundations are crazy left-wing things at this point, which just makes things worse. So I don't argue with what you're saying at all, Matt. I really don't.
yeah, I think it's good. And also, I mean, obviously, you can have kids that turn out not right, which is why I would encourage people to have. I have two great kids, although they're 17 and 19 now, so it's hard to say how they'll really turn out, you know. But I mean, they're great right now for sure, and I have a lot of faith in them. But that's why you should have a lot of kids. You know, more shots on goal. They might not all turn out the way you hope.
Yeah, and if you don't like the kid, you can always disown him after he reaches his legal majority, and you don't have to have anything to do with him if he didn't turn out right. He can
Yeah,
go and live his own life. So I
yeah,
guess you're right. I can't argue against what you're saying at all.
yeah. I think more kids. Kids are good, and there's never a good time to have kids. So it's like, don't plan your life around thinking that I'll have kids when. This is what a lot of young professionals do. Is they say, I want to get my life set up first. I want to have enough financial stability or whatever. It makes no difference, honestly. Like, you work around it. You make it work. So yeah, having kids is important.
Yep.
And
Well,
I think we have a couple questions relating to that, actually, from our one of our subscribers. So
let's
uh,
see what people have to say.
yeah, well, let's start with what this start with. So, well, actually, why don't I jump right into that, and we'll skip back. What exactly are Doug's thoughts on having children? Does he regret not having any? I know there are some people simply can't, and I, don't want to overbear, but I value his input here.
Well, I guess I answered that question already, but even when it came to getting married, uh, I was quite late. I mean, I was relatively speaking something of a party animal, and I liked the idea of being footloose and fancy free, not having to answer to anybody, go where I want, do what I want, when I wanted, which is pretty much was the case for me. So I didn't get married until, or well, actually, I had a problem with marriage as an institution.
Because the
Great for
state's involved.
society.
Because the state's involved.
Exactly. Why should I take the state as a third partner in a relationship between two people? But there are, there's a societal and a parental and other impetus towards actually signing these contracts and formalizing things. But as far as, it's well, it's just, I just didn't feel like I wanted to enter the lottery. With
You don't play lottery.
Yeah, no, I don't play lotto. So anyway, that's what happened there. So was it a mistake? Yeah, I guess it was a mistake. I made it. I should have reproduced as
Yeah,
well. That's what
I think you sh I think you should have. I would love to know your kids. I think it'd be great.
that's what healthy
Um,
young animals do is they mate and reproduce. And I guess I missed half of that vote. So oh well, next lifetime, if there
yeah.
is a next lifetime, and I have absolutely no proof that there is, unfortunately.
All right. Well, next question. maybe kind of relating, is hearing Doug speak about money and what he would do with it if he were to make more gives great perspective. This is relating to a Q&A a couple weeks ago. I'm wondering at this point in Doug's life, what does he want to leave behind as a legacy? When he sheds this mortal coil, how would he like to be remembered? Is legacy something Doug thinks or cares about?
Well, I actually don't need any more money. I've got more than enough. So why do I still work? I mean, we have just you and I together have several projects that are
Yeah,
remunerative. So why bother? Because sometimes it's a nuisance and I'd rather just, you know,
read a book.
read a book. Exactly. And I guess the answer to that is you want to feel productive because I think we're wired that way. Like squirrels are wired to save nuts. It's a
Yeah.
pro-survival action. Pro-survival is good. So I guess that's the answer,
Well,
really.
what about legacy?
I don't believe in legacy, actually, for a number of reasons. Because I'm a, you know, I'm a dust in the wind person, and you can kid yourself that you'll be remembered. And if you're somebody like Caesar or Genghis Khan or Alexander of Macedon, yeah, you'll probably be remembered. But all of those people were actually mass murderers, whatever pluses they might have. So you really, and anyway, how long does any legacy last? Okay. I mean, the pharaohs of Egypt, forget about the average Egyptian. Uh, we don't know or really care who they are, except as an archaeological curiosity. And legacy. I mean, how far in the future is that supposed to go? A few years after you die? 10 years? 100 years? Well, if you invent something, I mean, I'm a believer in it's just good karma to do good and productive things as opposed to bad and destructive things. Okay, so, but it's a form of egomania to want to,
Hmm.
I think, leave a legacy and pretend it's going to last very long because the earth itself isn't going to last very long uh, in a cosmic sense of things.
Yeah.
It's not. And there's a good question about how long humans as a species are going to last. You know, there's a book that has, I was just reading a review of it in Scientific American, which is a magazine I've come to hate because it's run editorial wise and every wise by left-wing women. I don't know if anybody's noticed that, but anyway, there was a review, but I still subscribe to it because there is some hard data in the thing. So, and it's a habit. And I was reading a review in it about a book written about the Calhoun mouse experiment. Are you familiar with that?
Is that the Mousetopia thing?
That's right. That's right. Exactly. And, I'm just wondering, and of course they drew all kinds of implications about people when you put them into large groups and, what happens and uh, how society of mice divide. And there are obviously a lot of analogies with humans. But here, we have, the science and technology and governments with their weapons are always the first ones to take advantage of science and technology. Uh, everything from nuclear weapons to biological weapons, a bunch of other things. I mean, could humanity really be destroyed just by itself in any number of ways, not counting, you know, uh, a super volcano or another
An
giant
asteroid strike.
asteroid.
Yeah.
Yeah, all kinds of things can happen. So who are we kidding?
Hmm. Well, so just as a counterpoint, I think legacy matters when you have children. A bit, but not for long. It's not about the long term. It's about the It's basically for a generation or two because essentially within every family there's the opportunity to create a meme. That meme is the legacy. It gives a family identity. It gives it a history. It gives it a sense of center that allows it to function better in society, I think. I just think of like I really, really lucky to know my great great grandmother who babysat us when I was under 7 years old and she was in her 90s. I mean, she's
Oh,
and so to hear her stories of like riding as a child on the Oregon Trail in a covered wagon. And my great great grandfather, who was started off as a janitor of John Deere and died as a vice president, or not didn't die as a vice president, but became a vice president. And when he died, he was so valued by Deere and Company that they sent the corporate jet to go pick him up and bring him back home for a funeral. Um, so I knew him, and I got to talk to him, and I got
mm,
to know more about him. And another grandfather on another side, like went through and sat down with me when I was a little kid and showed us our whole family tree that goes all the way back to the Mayflower. And John Howland, who the guy who fell overboard famously on the Mayflower but was rescued, it was my ancestor.
huh,
And so those memes, me share that they shared those memes with me, and I've shared those memes with my kids, helps them. I see it help
yes,
them. It gives them a sense of grounding. So I think there is a legacy that matters on the micro basis, but not on the macro. Like I don't care what the world thinks of me from a legacy standpoint, but I think that it's a gift that I can give my children and that they can then pass along to theirs if they choose. If they're wise, they will. And I think legacy matters a lot in that context.
well, I think that makes a lot of sense. And once again, the my the personal path that I've taken has had an effect on my view on that subject. So I guess insofar as I leave a legacy, it's only because I think you should do good and productive things just for the sake of doing them and for yourself. But if you've got kids, grandkids, whatever, that gives you a second and even more powerful reason to do so. So
Yeah.
nothing against legacies from that point of view. You just have to, I think you have to just keep it in context, like you try to keep everything in context.
Yeah, not to be immortal. Like that's the egomaniacal version of it, which is dumb, I think. But yeah, I mean, well, yeah, you have a legacy. You have so many people that are huge fans of yours that have been following you for years and whose thinking you've changed. So, but that's by serving your own interests along the way.
That's right. And I'm very flattered and very gratified insofar as that's true. And you'd hate to be somebody who everybody despises and hates and looks down upon.
And
Uh,
and 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 like a Madeleine Albright figure that we're happy when she died.
yeah. Oh, well, like most political figures, quite frankly. And let's take well-known American families like the Rockefellers and the Kennedys. uh, Whatever legacy was left, I think, is being dissipated. Uh, I mean, in the Rockefellers, are there any good Rockefellers? Not to my knowledge. Or the Roosevelts, any good? No, no good Roosevelts. So all they can say is, yeah, I had a rich and famous ancestor.
Right.
So
Exactly.
what?
Yep. So it hasn't done them any good. That's
No,
true.
it hasn't. I don't think it has.
All right. So next question is, he asks if you or I have read Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins. If so, what are your thoughts? And do you have an opinion on the death/life economy he talks about in his books?
Well, we had him on the show, and
We did.
we had a technical glitch in the show where my internet connection, I was in Virginia at the time when we had him on. And speaking for myself, I missed probably 15 minutes of the show when you were talking to him.
It was very uncomfortable for me when you left the room, I have to say,
Well,
because
it was
before,
uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable for me because it looked like I was dodging him because we'd already established the fact that we didn't like each other and
yeah.
didn't agree with each other.
And then you left, and I'm there alone with the guy.
Yeah. And as far as his book is concerned, I think he's quite correct about, I think he's telling the truth about what happened to him and the people that he was dealing with. And all, I think that's all true. I mean, the problem is he drew the wrong conclusions from those things. So he's become I guess he's a socialist, certainly a collectivist. He's a government guy. He just wants to see the kind of people that he ran into not be in the government, which is impossible because that's where they're drawn, that's where they live. So it's
Right,
naive. So
right.
that's
Yeah,
my
it's naive. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Yeah, that I think that book was really good, and I first heard about him because he spoke at one of your Casey Research conferences a long time ago. And that's where I first heard of him, and I read the book, and I was shocked by it actually. You know,
yeah.
but so it's definitely worth reading. But the man is different than the work. Excellent. The man and his ideas now questionable.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely agree. Book is worth reading. It's accurate, I think.
And what do you think about his how what he calls the death versus the life economy?
Oh, I forget.
It's
What is it?
essentially it was the disposition toward the people that he worked with and the job and the work that he did. He considered that the death economy, where basically it's kind of like going and really raping and pillaging these developing nations,
Mhm.
saddling them with that, that they knew they're setting them up for failure. So I guess that's what he would consider the death economy versus, I'm not really sure what the life economy would be not doing that, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, and I remember now, and that was a little bit nebulous. I guess the life economy would be, you know, happy and democratic socialism, something like the
Maybe so.
wannabe mayor of New York wants to do. So he's naive and doesn't understand economics, and but he's right. I mean, these people that get involved in all these governmental organizations are basically criminal personalities. So yeah,
And the system that he was uh, intimately involved with was one of essentially pillage.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was very worthwhile to read about what he did, and how he reformed. But he took the wrong path, in my opinion, to reform. He's actually
Yeah,
making things worse, just in a different way now.
yeah, agreed. Okay, so next question is, once AI exceeds the human intellect and capability and is able to handle all aspects of our survival, comfort, and convenience, do you think people will then be freed up to focus on higher level exploration, which relies not upon activity of the mind, which AI can do better anyways, but rather on pure awareness, which is separate from both mind and body? In this way, might AI help free us to realize our ultimate nature as consciousness itself? Um, and then he refers to Buddha and Jesus and Socrates as examples of those. He said, or will many become enslaved by comfort, convenience, and remain what you call hooting chimpanzees?
Well, that's a hell of a good question, and it relates to what we were talking about at the beginning. Are we going to become like the mice in Mousetopia, where in Calhoun's experiment, he gave those mice everything. It was a mouse utopia, and then very bad things happened. So,
Hmm.
is that the direction it would go, or will they become like incels and nasty purple-haired feminists as they dissipate? That's very interesting. It's an open question. Or
I,
or uh, you might just become a a Buddhist monk and sit in Padmasambhava and contemplate things all day. possibility.
Yeah, I think well, if you look at what technology has done with over the last 15 years, it's certainly turned, it's not AI, and it hasn't like solved everyone's needs for resources, but it does seem to have turned the population more into hooting chimpanzees so far.
Well, and I always like to look at the bright side. And apparently, college kids, and for that matter, high school kids, are using it to write their papers and use it to cheat to the degree they can on tests and so forth, because it helps them get a degree, but it actually is detrimental to their gaining actual knowledge. Uh, and they learn the value of dishonesty. Well, of course, it might all work out in the end. Uh,
Yeah,
and then we'll have Ray Kurzweil's uh,
singularity.
singularity, exactly, where everything is just magic. It might happen.
Yeah, I think it could go. I think that it creates an opportunity where it, among some, may rise to their higher self, but the vast majority will be driven down to their lower self, is what I suspect will be the ultimate outcome.
It's pretty much Pareto's law, where the top 20% will do good things, and the top 20% of that 20%, and the same is true on the bottom end. The you know bottom end are criminals, and the ones on the bottom are really bad criminals. And who knows how this is going to work out when magic happens?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and it's coming fast.
It is. It is. It's changing the whole nature of the world.
The next question is kind of it's another file member following up on it. He said, but about AI robots. When everything is provided in UBI, what is the incentive to do anything? Also, I think there will still be rich and poor, even with UBI. Some will save, some will spend, some will invest, etc. The question that I could never answer with UBI is who get who gets the ocean-front lot?
Mm. Well, I think we have to speak to this concept of UBI, which I consider, like all of these social engineering things, is seems well intentioned. I mean, so everybody can live at a decent standard, but it's extremely stupid and destructive. Uh, it's basically UBI is basically about putting the whole world on welfare. And you can see, yeah, I can see the argument for welfare. It's a bad argument, but I see the argument. But the problem is that when you get UBI, you're basically uh, a pet of the government, where the state is distributing things to you, and they're your benefactor, they're your guardian, they're your owner, they're your keeper. So the whole concept of UBI has to be thrown in the garbage can. And worse than that, it's going to destroy a lot of people because they're not going to feel a need to be productive or a need to be responsible. So this meme uh, is more well. It's really stupid. So
It's a trap, I think. I mean, Nassim Taleb has this aphorism that's, the three most addictive things on earth are heroin, carbs, and a monthly salary. And
mm,
and I mean, UBI takes us to a whole other level. And they're
yeah,
addictive in that they, you then be then with this reliable monthly salary, having spent most of my life without one, but a short period of time, 3.5 years where I had one and a great one, I could see its corrupting influence on me. That it's like, uh, yeah, I could see its corrupting influence on me, and I think that when you have UBI there, like you said, they control you. I mean, because this is now something you now count on, and you will meet whatever criteria you need to meet in order to make sure that it continues to flow. And I think that's definitely suppresses human freedom and individuality, no doubt about it, and it's dangerous.
Yeah, but I think it's on the way, quite frankly. And there was something else in that question earlier. What about robots with AI? Am I, what do we call it?
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
you know, starting with, God, which book? I don't know. Uh, 20 some years ago, I figured this is the way it's got to work, just because trends in motion stay in motion and they accelerate. And that's certainly true of technology. And now there's a number of companies, I don't know how many, a dozen, probably more than a dozen, who knows, that have bipedal robots that can do all kinds of things. And the next step is going to be combining them with, they're going to become human-like, if they're not actual androids with biological, not just biomechanical things. So at that point, you got to ask yourself, wait a minute, especially with all the other things we've been talking about, if you want a companion, and people apparently their their BFF is chat or any of these things where they can have a personal relationship with their computer AI at this point. All right, so it's in a robot, a beautiful female, comely female, everything you want, just the perfect person. Well, why would you want a human with all of the downsides and disadvantages? You'll have a robot girlfriend or boyfriend for that matter. So this has the potential to end badly.
yeah, it really does.
Not,
It really does.
I'm not even talking about the Terminator, because the state's idea of that comely male or female robot is going to be the Terminator, because
Ex
that's what they do.
exactly. Yeah, but you're right. Even the most positive version of it has a detrimental impact for sure. So, yeah, I don't
Yeah,
know.
can't
Maybe
wait to
maybe
find out. It's going to be this is just fascinating. This is like living in a sci-fi movie. I mean, it makes me feel I wish I was born 10 years later so that I could just observe. But then again, I don't want to live in the world of the Terminator either. Hmm.
yeah. Well, this is the advantage of having kids is that these are all things you have like if I don't, my kids will. So I definitely concern myself with, the future and trying to, not that I can affect that much about it, but as much as I can, try and make sure that, they're well equipped for it
Hmm.
because they're
Yes.
going to have to deal with it.
Yeah. And of course, we'll have that book out, arguably in a couple of months,
Yep.
really, getting down to the short strokes now.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, that's a question that comes up in a little bit. So, let's see. He's, so what are, Doug, in your thoughts on the impacts of Trump's bunker buster extravaganza in Iran? I'm interested in the impact on financial and share markets, supply chains, geopolitical relationships among the SCO and BRICS, plus the global South generally. Also, any thoughts on blowback from Russia and China, et cetera, would be interesting.
Yeah, well, that's a big, big question. And I kind of gave my answer to that question in an essay I wrote for internationalman.com last week.
Yeah,
So,
I'll include a link to that in this video. Okay.
yeah. And even that essay, which is like, I don't know, in between 1,500 and 2,000 words, I mean, you could write a book on that type of thing. So, I guess looking at it from a long-term point of view, this is what you call gunboat diplomacy. And this is something that states have always done from day one. I mean, the first written example of it we have is from uh, in Thucydides, his description of the Peloponnesian War, where he talks about Athens, which at the time was the shining city on the hill, the city with the the Parthenon and philosophers and playwrights and a, a real democracy, actually, an actual real democracy. And what does it do? Uh, that that it early in the war with Sparta, there's one island called Milos that says, "Look, we don't want any part of this. Okay, you guys fight it out. Leave us aside." And the Athenians basically said, "No, you're on our side." And so they invaded and they killed everybody they could on the island, except for well, they killed all the men and enslaved the women and the children and populated it with Athenians that didn't have much, just who wanted to get out of, wanted, anyway. So it started with that, and then gunboat diplomacy, where you don't do as we say, we'll send our sailing broadside ship to you and blow the hell out of your city. So this is nothing new. This is just
Yeah, it's like Matthew Perry opening up Japan, right? I mean, it
yeah,
was
open up, or we're going to blow up your city. I mean, and that's looked upon as being like, yay, wonderful thing. Well, not really.
right. Yeah, so these things continue. There's no stopping them. Um, do you think we've seen the last of the situation in Iran? I don't want to spend the whole time talking about it, but do you think that, I mean, Trump declared peace and everybody's kind of moved on,
Yeah, on the one hand, I mean, what do we know? All we hear is rumors and propaganda, and who knows what the facts are. So you attack a place, they tend to gather around their leader and their government, and on the other hand, but then maybe there's people that are going to use the chaos that's created as a reason to break off, like the Kurds, for instance,
hmm.
might want to break off, or perhaps a lot of people are sick of living in a theocracy with these mullahs, and you might have a different kind of civil war. I don't know. Either could
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, or or the ceasefire could break easily and war could easily resume. And what is weird is that, because there's a conflict and there's no like resolution to it. It's just like we're just going to stop. It's not like the
Yeah.
bad blood is gone. It's not
No.
like it's like, hey, these guys, from the Iranian perspective, these folks were just trying just last week. They tried to murder us, you know, and they did murder a lot of people, especially in the attack, specifically murder,
Yeah.
not just
Specifically.
war. And it's like that's not easily forgotten. It doesn't just go away.
No, it's not. And the Israelis don't have any friends in the Middle East. They may have neutralized their enemies for the time being. Like I thought it was especially interesting in Lebanon, where this was really so clever, where they got the Hezbollah guys to buy these pagers, loaded them up with explosives, and set them all off. And most people don't know, but the numbers have come out, and I'm not sure how many they killed, but they killed like 100 people. But the more important thing is there were 3,400 people that were maimed, had fingers blown off, had an explosion go off next to their gut, which horrible stuff. I mean, these are maimed. So Hezbollah has been set back a pace or two.
Yeah,
But
and I was just gonna say, and by the way, Israel was bombing Lebanon today,
oh,
by the
were
way.
they? Oh, I guess they
Yeah,
didn't take out all the, yeah, because all these people have sons and daughters and relatives, and they're saying those damned Israelis, we got to put an end to this. This is too much. I mean,
yeah,
nobody's safe with well, Israel. This is Hatfield's and McCoy's stuff. It doesn't matter who started it. It doesn't matter who's right or who's wrong. It ain't going to end.
it ain't gonna end. I think you're right. Okay. Next question is, what's the likelihood the financial house of cards will remain erect through the end of 2025?
Hmm. Well, it's funny. I'm on another Zoom call with a bunch of mostly hedge fund uh, managers and money managers and big deal guys. All these guys are, and it's funny. There's one guy on there who's actually quite well known, uh, and he thinks happy days are here again. It's going to be wonderful on every way possible. I mean, Israel's triumphing. He's a member of the tribe, nice guy, but I mean, his bread is buttered with the tribe, and he's a real estate guy, and everything's going to be great. Problem solved. And I'd say the chances of that are slim and none, and Slim's out of town, and it is going to blow up for all kinds of reasons, really badly this year. There's a really good chance it'll be this year, but well, just like with the technology thing, I can't wait to find out.
Yeah.
I'm not,
Okay.
I'm not, I'm not betting on happy days though. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm not either. I mean, things always take longer than you expect. So is it this year or next year? Or I think I'm pretty sure the Magic computer said 2027. Um, but either way, it's coming.
I really, in order to have more credibility with people, I've got to buy one of those magic 8 balls.
You
I
do.
mean, they're at least as good as a computer program.
Something. I don't know if you need to show the Magic 8 ball. If you showed it, it might not have the credibility. But if you shook it up underneath the camera to get the answers,
Yeah,
I think then you'd maintain the credibility.
I could say it's an early version of a quantum computer or something.
Exactly. Okay. So someone asked about book progress. They're asked about the preparation and terrace. So the preparation, it's on me right now again, and very just final touches at this point, and I'll send it back to Doug for the final touch.
Yeah, and
So we're very
I've been the
close,
weak link in this thing so far, but at this
but not
point,
right now.
not
Not
right
right now.
now.
You're not.
No, but I'm
And
going
then
to. Yeah,
and then the next one is terrace, which you're working on with John Hunt.
yeah, and John's basically done his part so far. So I'm going to dig into that when I get back to Virginia. So
Okay.
books on the way.
Okay. Is there a particular group of people, say an ethnicity or religion, that seems to be behind everything bad that happens? Or does that background not matter and it simply boils down to the basic human instincts of deceit, envy, and hunger for power?
Hmm. Well, that's kind of there's a
The lead,
sub-rosa theme there. I mean,
yeah,
we're not supposed to talk about this stuff, but it's there's a rhyme. How out of God to choose the Jews, and all I blame so much of this on these Abrahamic religions. I mean, all three of them. Uh, yes, I know Christianity was wonderful, and I know the whole story because that's been a hobby of mine is the ancient world. And therefore, you have to look at the relationship of the ancient world to Judaism and Christianity, and actually Islam, which ended the ancient world really more than as much as anything else. But all three of those religions, uh, for whatever good they do, they've done a lot more bad. And the poor Jews, I mean, because they hold tradition together, and you know, people have never liked the Jews. And why haven't people not liked the Jews? Because they're cliquish. They eat only their own food. They consider other people's food to be impure and improper. They got their own habits. They look down on other races. They've been very successful because they're cliquish and they work with each other. Well, everybody tries to do that. I mean, in the Orient, well, all over the world, people don't like the Chinese. Why? Because they're more successful. They're cliquish. They hang out with each other. They have Chinatowns. They prefer to deal with each other. And I mean, the Chinese, which are very numerous, unlike the Jews, of which there are only like 15 million in existence, uh, it's the same thing. And it's the same thing with other groups. With the Indians, I understand that the Gujaratis are looked
Hmm.
on as being you know, the Jews of India. That Well, I think Modi is a Gujarati
Hmm.
in India. So it's that type of thing. And look at the Gypsies. That's a that's a horrible group. From If you look at what they produce nothing. They have a reputation as thieves, scammers, pickpockets. I mean, if you've ever met any gypsies in Europe, or for that matter in the US, they have very little to recommend them. So
If you ever encounter them, they were probably trying to steal your purse or wallet, actually, as if
yes,
you did run into them.
yeah, and if you run into them and they have kids, they have the kids grab onto your legs, and the only way you can't kick them away. So the only thing you can do is hope you're near a shop and walk in so the shopkeeper can kind of,
Push them
you
out.
know, yeah, like barnacles. I mean, so you got all these different groups, that I've named. How many have I named? Four or five. And well, they all do
I'll,
this.
I'll, I'll,
Listen,
and I'll,
I had some Irish friends, and I'm partially of Irish background and descent, and we were talking about racist things. And as far as they were concerned, everybody other than Irishmen, they're IRA supporters, they should all be wiped out, but they weren't in a position to do that. I mean,
hmm,
so this is what happens with ethnic groups or religious
hmm.
groups.
Yeah, and I mean, put some benign ones in that category too. Not necessarily feel like everyone should be wiped out exactly, but you can put the Mormons in that group.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, they certainly are cliquish and working together, and and very effective in doing that. And if and I know a lot of Mormons, and I like them, but still, you see this thing where you're an
Yeah,
outsider to it, and they can be very friendly with you, but there's the priority is the group.
that's it. That's exactly right. You're you're a goyim, which is what the Jews call, which means cattle.
Yeah.
And what do the
Uh,
Mormons say? You are oh God. Well, and the Muslims say this, you're a kafir if you're not a Muslim and you're treated accordingly. This is a natural thing. And some of these groups are just more successful than others. And some
right.
are easier than others. And so
Right. And it's so the question was, is there a particular group that's behind this? All he says, everything bad that happens. Or does the background not really matter? And it simply boils down to basic human instincts of deceit, envy, and hunger for power.
yeah, that's what it boils down to. But the most successful for many, many years have been the Jews. So, I mean,
Yeah.
if you're smart, you might convert to Judaism. But then again, maybe that's not so smart because they're a small minority. So, eh,
And they've, in the last couple of years, they've not served their interests well, I don't think.
no, they haven't. No, they haven't. They've caused a lot of antagonism. And if you're a small group, it doesn't matter how much money you have. People really don't like you. It ain't good.
Yeah. Okay. Just a few more questions for you, I guess. Doug, do you think that China stopped Iran from closing the Strait of Hormuz?
I think the Iranians are pretty smart, actually, notwithstanding the fact they have a goofy theocracy. And they probably did a calculation and saw that if they took an action that inconvenienced and caused a loss of wealth to so many people in the world, that they're asking for trouble. So they want to avoid that. I think that's I think that's their equivalent of the Israelis' Samson option, where if things are
Right.
really, really going bad, you blow everybody up. And as close as the Iranians can come. That's an economic Samson. They want to avoid that.
Yeah, and China, they wouldn't need China to stop them because they can basically do the math on their own. It hurts them, it hurts their allies. Probably not a good move.
No, no, that's right. For them to get really desperate and have a maniac leading the country. And I have no idea whether, you know, the Ayatollah is a maniac or not. It doesn't seem like he is. He's just a religious true believer, but I don't know.
Yeah, and he's an old guy who basically, I mean, if he were a 33-year-old, I don't know. I would be more worried about him being more of a radical. But I just think as you get older like that, I think you get a longer view of things, and you know,
But on the other hand, all three of these Abrahamic religions have a strain that runs through them where they want to immanentize the eschaton. The Muslims want to have the Mahdi come back and overthrow all the evil people. And, these, what's that group of Jews that, the
the
ones that were,
messianic
yeah,
ones,
yeah, there's a lot of them that wear the crazy 19th century, uh, you know, garb. What the hell? What are
the
they
the
called?
yeah, I can't recall, but those are
Hapadim,
the
maybe.
ones. Those are the ones who have prepared the red heifers, so they could
Yeah,
build the
all
third
that
temple.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
the Chabad and all this type of thing. And of course, the Christians, you got a whole bunch of them with different things like Hal Lindsey's late great Planet Earth and that TV series Left
Left Behind.
Behind. Yeah, they all these goofballs want to immanentize the eschaton so that the Mahdi or Jesus or whoever it is going to come back and kiss everything and make it better. Yeah, so you got to watch out for these people. You put them in positions of power, and crazy things can happen.
Yep, I think we've seen some of it. And overall, how do you judge Russia and China's reaction or lack of reaction in regards to the U.S. bombing of Iran?
Smart, smart. Keep your nose out of it. You got nothing to gain by getting involved in World War III. So they're a lot smarter than our government, which is demonstrably stupid.
I agree.
Smart
Okay.
is the answer.
Do you have any thoughts on Orania, South Africa? It says, I'm fascinated with their success in starting a new community or a mini civilization on totally underdeveloped land. Also of interest is their currency, which is essentially a coupon type system, and the coupons are only useful within the town. It is said by a leader of the group that it's a way of increasing security. Other
Mm,
words, if they were attacked and robbed of their money, it would be of no use outside of the town, which in turn discourages such attacks.
hmm Yeah, I don't know that much about them. My wife is an Afrikaner. Actually, my wife is a direct descendant of Paul Kruger.
Hmm.
Uh, and she hasn't visited Orania. But listen, I think it's great. And this is what we were talking about before. I mean, birds of a feather flock together and have their own groups. But my understanding, and this may not be entirely correct, is that the South African government doesn't like to have a state within a state. So they're trying to do something about Orania because they look too prosperous and too successful. So, meanwhile, in Johannesburg, I think, and I've got to get better information, which I can do pretty easily. I just haven't done it yet because I've got a lot of friends there. I understand that there are major office buildings in Joburg that have been essentially abandoned and turned into residential, which means that squatters are living in them up to about the ninth floor, which is about as far as you can walk, even though
Yeah,
the
I saw an article in that, and they were like, "It's just like they came in from the bush and sort of took it over, and like they were apparently like just shitting in the elevator shafts. That's what they thought they were used for."
yeah, I mean, so I've got to get up to current speed on how bad things are getting in Joburg. But I remember, God, when did I first go to South Africa? Anyway, I remember when things were starting to change. And of course, I was just a tourist. I didn't know things were starting to change. And I was staying at the Carlton Hotel. It was the Carlton, I think, in downtown Joburg, the best hotel in Joburg. And, there was, I wanted to see a movie right next door. And the movie happened to be The Meaning of Life by Monty Python. Still today, one of my favorite movies. It's a work of genius. And I looked around in the theater. I was laughing my head off. I mean, I'm sure everybody in the theater thought, who's this crazy Mzungo laughing his head off? I was about the only white guy in the theater. And that was a long time ago. So,
Mm.
yeah, I suspect what I've heard about the office buildings there is going to be true. In fact, for all I know, the same thing could happen to New York when they have their new, when he does all these stupid things. I mean, anybody with any money or smarts is going to get the hell out of New York, at least while he's in office. And you're going to have abandoned see-through office buildings throughout Manhattan
Mm. You
and
know, though
too.
I was only in Johannesburg once, I think it was in like 2015, and we stayed at it's a hotel now, but apparently it was where Mandela stayed right after when he was released from prison. It was this estate basically in the middle of Johannesburg, and it's a beautiful spot. And but it's a compound, and these high fences and all that. And I wanted to go for a run one day, and they're like, "You can't." I'm like, "What do you mean I can't?" They go, "It's not safe." And I said, "Well, I'm gonna go for a run." And they said, "Okay, well, we'll send someone with you." And they had a guy following me who was armed on my jog the whole way. There was no problem I encountered, but that's how worried they were about security then in 2015.
Yeah, yeah. South Africa's, I think it's going to get much worse. I really do.
Yeah, seems that way. Two last questions. It says, how can we avoid becoming stressed and frustrated by the news and future prospects? How do you still stay positive and do not lose faith in the future?
Well, on the one hand, future is going to be better than not only we imagine, but can imagine. But on the other hand, we've talked about all the gloom and doom. So, this is one of the problems of being in the pundit business, which we're in. In the pundit business, we have to keep up with the current news. And the current news, I'd say, at this point in history, is generally bad. If I was a, if we were pundits 100 years ago, I mean, the news would be generally all good. I mean, it would be wonderful. It would be like Jules Verne's novels. That was an
Yeah.
optimistic time where, all these wonderful things were being happening could be described. So, well,
Yeah,
it comes.
it makes it depressing. I mean, you and I have talked privately about, keeping up with the news. It's just not only is it we know it half of it's propaganda, a certain portion of it is totally false. Um, it's depressing to keep up with it. So,
Yeah,
yeah, what do you do?
I guess you can just try to be entertained and realize that well, as you pointed out, we're probably living in a simulation.
I think we are. Yeah,
And and of course, uh, as a solipsist myself, this is all a figment of my imagination on one level. So similar views.
it's very similar. But I also think that there's a lot that you can do to create, like we create the I use this metaphor with someone in our VIP group the other day. I said, that we are prisoners of our choices. Like we live in a prison now, and I mean that, it doesn't necessarily have to be a prison. It could be because of your choices, but it is a prison. Like I chose to have children, so I have response, and I chose to be a responsible parent. So those choices lead me to there's this certain limitations to what I can do and how I can live. And Part of the prison is that I live in Uruguay, you know, and I like that. I mean, I've created this version of a prison that I think is pretty sweet, actually. And I think that, focusing on your choices and realizing that those choices, not the news, create your reality. You don't have to call it a prison. People don't like that negative metaphor, but that your choices create that, and you have to be focused on those things and not the what is being fed. It's called a feed for a reason. What's being fed to you in the algorithm.
Yeah, yep, I completely agree with that. Um, anyway, there's an argument that can be made that planet Earth itself is a prison planet. I mean, there's so many religions out there that like we we talked the other day, I guess briefly, I think we did anyway, about the flat Earth guys, right? Here
Yeah,
we talk about that because I got a chance to do a Zoom call for an hour and a half with the flat Earth people because I was uncertain that they really existed. I thought it might have just been a meme or a troll or something. I said, this is too crazy to be true, but it is true. Uh, and it's so among other religions, I mean, one uh, thinks that the Earth is basically a prison planet where where those who have committed crimes and misdemeanors in other parts of the universe are sent here to sink or swim. So, maybe that's true. Well, fortunately, we're trustees in the prison. It's not like at the moment we're down in the hole, which would be the
right.
case if you're in India or Africa, for instance.
E- Exactly. Exactly. So, but yeah, I think the biggest thing you can do, just to answer the question personally, I think the biggest thing you can do is focus on the things that are in your control. And there's lots of positive actions you can take around you all the time, every day, at every moment that make life beautiful. And you don't have to be, you don't have to be drawn into the next theatrical display of politics.
Yeah, and stay away from those crazy chimpanzees. That's distance is one of the best things that you can use to your advantage there.
Yeah, and that was one question I also had was I think I skipped, which was speaking of chimpanzees, the guy asked how to overcome being defrauded and how to generally avoid it. Just having to do with chimpanzees who would defraud you.
Hmm. You know what they say, you can't cheat an honest man.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I think the best answer to that is make sure that you have a solid moral code and try not to violate it. And that's probably your best defense. But, some frauds are so clever that, they've,
Well, like I think of like Bernie Madoff, right? It was a fraud. It was extremely clever, and that and he induced many, many, many people into it over time. And I think that lots of decent people were taken down by that fraud. But I think, it's just a realistic comparison of what's possible. And
yeah.
a lot of times you just get induced by something that's, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. I mean,
And of course, hindsight is 2020. And in retrospect, a lot of, really smart financial guys who got taken said, yeah, it didn't make any sense. But he was showing the numbers. There's something wrong with this. But yeah, so they suspended disbelief.
right. Yeah. So be honest, and then don't you have to approach life with a certain amount of skepticism. If something seems unbelievable, it probably is.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, talk about being defrauded. I really wonder the degree to which you actually own anything in the financial world. It's all on computers. It's all digital. And, what you own or think you own in stocks and bonds and title to so many things.
In ebooks even, right?
Yeah, they could disappear.
Yeah.
So have some gold and silver coins in your own possession and, you know, have a property that you can assert dominance on because it's yours. And that's all you can really be kind of sure of.
Yeah, it's possession is 9/10 of the law. Maybe possession is the 10/10 of ownership, actually.
Yeah, that's right. And, and you've got to then you got to defend it. And this is maybe this is a prison planet. I don't know.
It could be, but like you said, we are trustees of the prison, which isn't so bad.
Not so
Um,
bad. But most of the forget about people in the whole. Just being in Gen Pop is kind of marginal at best.
yeah, I totally agree. Which is why you should get out of New York and places like that. Um, let's see. Last question, Doug. What do you make of the sudden spike in platinum recently?
Uh, I was looking at it and saying, I got to buy this, and I didn't. But maybe I should buy it now because maybe just the trend is in motion. I mean, it wasn't so long ago. Platinum was $3,000 an ounce. Maybe it'll go there again. I can see why.
What's it at today?
Uh, I think I looked, it was 1,300 or something,
Hmm.
and it was down around 1,000 only a few months ago. So has the move been made and we missed it, or this is the beginning of a trend? This is why, you know, people read charts, and sometimes, you know, you draw a line on a chart, and I don't believe in that. So I don't know. Maybe I'll buy a little platinum just because I'll feel too bad if it keeps going back to $2,000 or $3,000 an ounce.
Yeah, I mean, I just own Sibane Stillwater. Is that how you say it?
Yeah,
SBSW?
that's uh, Sibanye, I think.
Sibanye.
I think so.
I've never heard it pronounced, so I've only, but I own that, but I don't own any platinum directly.
Yeah, and I don't want to own any platinum mines in South Africa, frankly, because the electricity is cut off and there's all kinds of problems. So you got this platinum play in southern Montana or wherever it is. No, I guess that's one
Yeah,
thing. And
yeah,
you can't own any platinum or palladium plays in Russia. That's, not happening either. So yeah,
yeah,
just yeah, if it goes way up, then maybe Stillwater might might catch fire.
yeah. It could. I mean, it's done pretty well recently. I mean, it's the last 6 months, it's up 100%.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So, but I recognize it could be seized or whatever at any time. As this trend is kind of, I think is growing around the world.
Yeah, it is. And Trump is quite capable of cranking up some nationalistic excuse to optimize things. He's doing stuff like that. He likes the idea of a national industrial policy.
What do you think about the idea? I think I know what you'll think about it, about the proposal from Senator Mike Lee of selling a portion of the national lands.
Well, I kind of like that. In fact, I don't think the US government should have title to anything. So I think it should all be sold or distributed somehow.
Yeah,
Uh, it's a misallocation having the US government own it, which means nobody owns it, except the forest rangers who like that kind of thing and get to, be lords of the realm up there.
yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I will say though, I do agree with you principally, but having lived in the U.S. West and been able to take advantage of that much of that land. A lot of it you can't, but I mean, all the national forests, all of that. I mean, it was really wonderful. And you come here to Uruguay, where there is no public land. It really is all privately owned. And, so there's like good luck finding a hiking trail. I mean, you have to get permission from four different property owners, and they do that. They organize hikes that are where they get permission from four different property owners to occasionally do hikes. But like, yeah, there's some real downside to that too.
I understand, but I think that when they privatize all these parks and everything, that could perhaps be a condition of purchase. It's that, okay, we'll sell it to you, you run it, but uh, one of the conditions of purchase is that you have to continue to allow tourism or hiking or whatever the hell it is, which would be the highest and best use of that land anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So things are different in, the US than Uruguay for that reason.
Yeah, and I would like it better if they were at least like putting it, well, like your idea for third world countries, like reforming them. You take the national assets and you sell them, or you put them in a public company, and you distribute shares in that public company to the people, and then do it that way. But like the idea of the government now, the way they have planned, is just to take it and sell it. It basically will provide zero benefit to the citizens in the way that they're doing it at a cost.
Yeah, the government gets the money, and the people that buy it from the government are their buddies, the
Yeah.
oligarchs who are going to get richer. So they'll manage to screw this up, no question about it.
Yeah, no, I wish they would use like your plan. I think that would work. That, at least there would be some benefit for everybody in the process.
I think it'll work better, I really do. But of course, even if you give shares on productive assets to all the people, and you letter them so that they can't piss it all away tomorrow morning on a new Toyota or a drunken binge, which some of them would be prone to do. After a generation, things kind of settle out where the smart people get stuff and the poor people don't, and then they can whine and vote socialist. And
Yeah, the cycle continues. The cycle continues. That's true. There's no way around it.
but maybe with the wise and prudent plans of our elite to eliminate 80 or 90% or however many of the world's population, it won't be as much of a problem as we might think.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think if BlackRock ends up owning all these, ends up owning everything, it won't matter if the population is low.
It is quite amazing how BlackRock arose seemingly out of nowhere. And Larry Fink, I mean, maybe it was a big deal within his coterie, but seems like just a suit that became one of the most powerful men in the world somehow. Amazing.
Somehow, and I think that power is only growing. Yeah. Okay, well, that's all the questions we had for today, Doug. So we'll just wrap it up here, and we'll be back next week with more.
Oh, can't
So
wait to see what happens. Thanks, Matt.
thanks. All right, Doug. Have a good weekend.
Have a
Talk to
good
you soon.
weekend.
Bye bye.